tremendous with
that's
the
a good
thread
picture,
too.
yeah.
Aren't you the one? Look at that.
Okay, I think we're live. Hi, Mom.
Hey, Mom.
A special shout out to you, Jerry. We'll be praying for you today and tomorrow for your surgery. So everybody say hi to Jerry. Interesting about this picture that you brought that up. I wasn't going to mention this, but this was Microsoft has their AI built-in AI Copilot or whatever the tool's called. And I typed in create an image of a tapestry with loose threads with Old Testament themes.
Wow.
So that's what's generated.
You're kidding. Wow.
Yeah. So, and I thought, that's
But
not
AI
exactly
did
what I
all
was looking
that.
for, but it'll do.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it because you're talking about the threads, and yet I'm looking in Isaiah Messianic, the
Yeah.
future with Revelation.
Right.
That's what I'm looking at also.
Yeah.
I think it's tremendous.
Yeah.
Good job.
So you can thank whoever
Co-pilot.
Copilot, whatever it's called. Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. Well, that'll get us started. This is going to be a full hour. Be a lot of reading, but not a lot of discussion because we've already read all of this before. Right. But anyway, I'm just going to get started because the less I talk, the better. As we have read through Isaiah, we've had a number of these threads. I've mentioned them as they've come. This is one that you should recognize. These 4 verbs: see, hear, know, and walk. And remember when we started Isaiah, we said it breaks up really nicely into 2 sections: judgment and salvation. And we saw this theme very early in the judgment thing because people see, but they're blind. They hear, but they're deaf. They know the word of God, but they don't understand it. And they definitely are not walking with God. They are out of step. How does this thread work on the salvation side of the story? The new things have come. He uses the same idea. How does that happen in the new side? Because we've read a lot of verses on the new side. I have one in mind, but there are others. No takers on that one, huh? Okay. Remember, I gave you the sheet very early on. We're supposed to fill in all the things on the threads. What do you have filled in there?
The same sheet that you're referring to.
That is the sheet. I couldn't find a copy of it, so I just held up a blank one, knowing I would create guilt the same way.
What part were we supposed to fill in? I don't see any place I have notes.
Well, here's the one. We won't spend all day on this, but we could apparently. If you flip over to Isaiah 54:13, and this is talking about this the new kingdom, or the new things that'll come, and there's this promise that all your children will be taught by God. And remember, we have the Jewish people have this thing about their ancestry. We're the children of Abraham. We're the children of Abraham. We're the children of Abraham. You know, we serve the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. There's this thing about ancestry, but there's also this thing about their future, their descendants. And they don't, they feared being cut off. And that's why the kinsman redeemer was such a big illustration in the Boaz and Ruth story. God's called that redeemer of Israel, because it's the idea you're not going to be cut off, but you will have this future generation. And the future generation will be taught by God. They will see from God himself. They will hear from God himself. They will know because God teaches them, and that will allow them to walk with God. And so that's how that theme sort of pulls itself in. And just in that one verse, how that's sort of brought about. Okay. Here was another thread that came through: light and darkness. And light and darkness has been a theme in Scripture ever since God separated the two in Genesis 1. What was Isaiah pointing when he pointed to darkness on the salvation half of the book? What was the things that were dark that he was pointing to? It's an easy one.
Sin.
Yeah, sin. Yeah. It's their sin, it's their idolatry, it's their injustice, what they've done to each other, what they've done to God. They're walking away from God. They're in darkness. They don't understand. They're totally in the dark. But there's a beautiful verse in that first saying where God sort of promises this future, even though there's going to be judgment. He says the light will dawn, the dawning of the day. And that idea that God will bring revelation, God will bring light to them. There'll be hope, there'll be understanding. And then we get to the herd above us. When we get to the New Jerusalem, there's no longer need for the sun or the moon because God's light will be all there. We will see because the light is there. So that thread is all the way through the book. Here's another one, the highway or the path, or the way. And we read several of these passages of a highway in the wilderness where God isn't, but make a path to God, even though you're in the wilderness. Make a path for your God. John the Baptist, of course, says, prepare ye the way. And he's quoting from Isaiah 40. So there's this theme of this return back to God, clear out the obstacles, make it smooth, make there's nothing to keep you from God, to be a straight path back. And so that theme runs all the way through the book. Then we have this thread of the nations. We saw from the very beginning that the nations also are subject to judgment, but they're also invited to the banquet at the end. Just like the nation of Israel is subject to judgment for their sin, so the nations will be judged for their sin. But there's still a promise for them. There's still hope for them. There's still light for them. And in the end, the nations will stream to this new city of Jerusalem. So that theme runs all the way through Isaiah. Of course, these themes are all through the Bible as well. I mean, it's not just Isaiah. And then there's this idea of the remnant. And again, we come back to this ancestry and descendancy, that you will not be cut off, that you will have this remnant that remains. And these blessings that are promised will be for that remnant, ones that remain. Even though there's judgment, through that judgment, there will be salvation. And this remnant will be those that we saved. And I mentioned Boaz and Ruth as one example of that redemption, that buying back so that they're not cut off. It's not just Ruth that's redeemed. It's really the husband who has passed, that his line will continue. And in the same way, the nation, the people of God will continue. They will not be cut off. And I could have done a whole lesson on all 5 of these, but I didn't want to be here through July. So what I did was I took a step back, and one of the messages of Isaiah is it starts in a period of pending judgment, and it ends in a period of glorious hope. And God offers us hope for people in distress, people that are beaten down, they're overrun, they're oppressed by others. What time period do you think fits this image of where God's message of hope would be meaningful? Where in history does this occur? Anywhere. That's the answer we're going to get to, but let's do a step before that. What are some specific periods where this happens?
Like an art history or like a biblical history?
Yes.
Yes, what?
Yes, what? Biblical or in our history?
Yes,
Oh,
it's an
either
or
one.
statement. Both are only one of them has to be true.
Well, I think about the Jews.
All right,
The
which
Holocaust.
Yeah,
the Holocaust is one in our period.
That's when it came to
Right.
mind first.
yeah, that's the one that comes to my
What
mind.
about the Jews in Isaiah's period?
Yeah.
Yeah, in the exile, in Babylon. They're stripped of everything. They're destroyed as a people. They're destroyed of possessions, their legacy. All of that appears to be gone. And they're beaten down and overrun. How about in Jesus's day?
Roman oppression.
Roman.
Yeah, the Roman oppression. Right. Right. So the message of hope is anytime this occurs, and this occurs all through history. We know there's 3 periods because we're in Bible study, and those are all 3 in the Bible. But except for the Holocaust, that was not in the Bible. But the other,
You said it was okay.
I know, I know, I know, I know. I know. I will, I know.
Well, there's lots of examples of it that we've seen in our lifetime, or that we know from the history
Right.
books that aren't in the Bible. You
Right.
know, there are.
And certainly periods of individuals
Mhm.
or smaller groups where that's true. So what I want you to do is think about where Jesus addresses the beaten down, the overrun, the oppressed. And in one of the places he does that on the Sermon on the Mount. So if you flip over to Matthew 5, and Cindy, I'll just have you start reading. Okay.
Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God.
Yeah, now we're going to spend a little bit of time in this passage, so keep it open. There'll be a quiz here in a second. But how do Jesus's words impart a sense of hope, a sense of a dawning light, a glimpse of what God intends to do in their midst, as he's speaking to a people at a time? How does Jesus offer some measure of hope or some dawning of light, some new thing that God's going to do?
Well, for each negative thing, he's giving a positive response.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Even though the times are bad now, there's a blessing. There's a blessing there. Something will happen. God will do something. It's not just a blessing, though, right? It's more than just a blessing.
Promise.
Yeah, there's a promise there. What are some of the promises?
Heaven.
Comfort,
Comfort, because I'm oppressed, I'm pushed
Mercy.
down. Comfort.
mercy,
There's mercy. I'm put upon, but God will show mercy to me.
They will be with God.
They will be with God. They won't be alone. They won't be ostracized anymore. They will be present with God. Great. Anything else?
there won't be hungry and thirsty anymore.
Right. It won't be a scratch existence.
Right.
There'll be bounty. There'll be a filling. All through there, it's a message of hope. It's a message of hope for people that under the Roman oppression are oppressed, that have a scratch existence, that wonder where their God is because he's been silent for 400 years, right? From Malachi, it's 400 years. Now Jesus is on the scene. And there's suddenly a message of hope. A light is dawning for them. Here's something new. And so Jesus does this in this Sermon on the Mount. He starts with the Beatitudes, these blessings that are promised. I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but they're actually in three triads. Things in threes are triads. And if you look at the first three, blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are those that mourn, and blessed are those that are meek. It's kind of a condition of the soul, condition of the heart. And so what does God promise for the condition that they're in? Just look at the blessings for these three conditions. What do they get?
Heaven is the first one.
Kingdom of heaven,
They get the kingdom,
peace,
Comfort,
comfort,
comfort.
and inheritance. So they don't have anything now. But boy, what do they get? They get immediate comfort for their condition, and they get this promise of a future inheritance. God sees them where they are and offers the hope, the promise that he will elevate them because they are important to him. And that's the key piece. We read in Isaiah that every valley will be exalted. When you're in that low place, God cares about you in that low place. And what he promises, what he wants to do, the hope that he's offering is that you will be elevated, you will be raised up, you will be leveled out. Those that are high above you will be brought down, and there'll be this leveling. That message was true in Jesus' day when the people were powerless against Rome. And it's relevant in Isaiah's day as Judah faced the threats from Assyria and then later the exile in Babylon. And it's true today. Men and women around the world, our own communities, lost, looking, despairing, and needing the hope that Jesus offers. Jesus reaches out to sinners, the lost, the ignored, the ones that no one else values, and the ones forgotten or overlooked. And in the next part of the sermon, he calls for those who do follow him to be the salt and to be the light. I think it's implied for be the salt and the light for the people that no one else cares about, the people that are oppressed, the people that are put upon. If you flip over to Matthew 25, it's the it's like we're in a thunderstorm here. And he tells the parable of the sheep and the goats. And the question isn't what's your theology? The question isn't what you believe. The question is, what have you done for the least of these? So the least of these is what's important to God. And so he starts the Beatitude with those that are in this condition, that have this heart of poverty, of mourning, of inability to change their circumstances. And he says, no. These are the people I'm come for. This is the blessing that I have promised. This is the blessing that I have promised. Look at the next three. And these three kind of express what's our response in the midst of a trial. What do you do in the midst of that? Well, blessed are those who hunger and thirst, even in the midst of a trouble, that are hungering and thirsting for righteousness. And those that even in the midst of not showing mercy are still merciful. And even in the midst of those that are cruelly oppressed are still pure in their heart about wanting God, about seeking God, about hungering and thirsting for God. And so this condition is also a condition of the heart. Okay. I wonder where that came from. Yeah. And so what's promised for these three? What are the promises? Thank you, Harry.
First one, the righteousness you be filled,
Filled,
mercy,
forgiven.
and then pure in heart, you will see good.
Yeah. Fellowship. They'll start with that. So that's why I know the truth,
Yeah.
right? They'll be filled, they're forgiven,
Mhm.
and they have fellowship. So even though in your current situations you're oppressed, even in your current situation you're put upon, this is what's promised. You will be filled. In John 10:10, I come that you may have life, and not just life, but life abundantly. You will be filled to the full, and you'll be forgiven, and you'll have fellowship with God. And so that condition is there. And Isaiah makes the same call. He makes the same call when he preaches. He says, return to the covenant of promise, come back to life. Reflect the nature, be the light to the nations, be who you're called to be. Respond because of who God's promised you as the chosen people. Be that kind of people. Hunger and thirst for this. Don't go off on your way and be satisfied with the status quo. Hunger and thirst for it. And then if you look at the last three, the third triad, blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are those that are persecuted. And then blessed are those, my paraphrase, falsely accused and insulted. This is how the world who oppresses you, this is your response to that world that you live in that is oppressive. The world that opposes who you are and what you stand for. And what do they get? What are the promises for those three?
Kingdom of heaven,
Kingdom of heaven. They have a place.
of children of God.
Children of God. They're sons of God.
Sons
Mhm.
of God. Mhm.
And final one. Otherwise, just give it to you, but it's there. It's the reward. They'll be rewarded.
Heaven, yeah.
Yeah. So you'll have this place, this new kingdom, this place that's yours, that you will have. You don't have it now because you're lowly, you're oppressed, but you will have this new place. And you will have a place in that place because you'll be sons of God. And if you endure against this opposition, then you have this reward. So three great promises. And what I found really interesting, I'm gonna figure out how I transition this. Here it is, right here. This is beautifully written. I don't know who did this, but they're really nice. Jesus calls us to respond in the present with the hope and the promise of the future. We are called to take the next step in obedience, having faith in God to deliver what he has promised, even if that deliverance is beyond our own years. In other words, a future beyond us. If we read in Hebrews 12, you have this wonderful verse. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders the sin that so easily entangles us, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who has endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. Consider him who has endured the same opposition you have, and probably much worse. And fix your eyes on him as a model. He teaches us how to walk, fixing our eyes on that future, fixing our eyes on what's ahead. He tells us who to follow. We have a clear and a purposeful example. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross. He endured the current time because of the promise that God had for him. And that promise then gets fulfilled as he sits at the right hand. And then finally, he kind of gives us an idea of how to hang on. Consider him who had endured it, that promise will be fulfilled. Hang on. God said it. God will do it. For the glory set before him, the promise, he sat down, the fulfillment. And it's a fitting start to this thread in Isaiah, where we trace these same ideas through the chapters of Isaiah. Does Isaiah address those who are in a condition of mourning, of being humbled, who have no voice? Yes, he does. Does he address those who turn to God, responding to his call to return? Yes, he does. And does Isaiah address those who are facing difficult times?
Yes.
Yes, he does. So let's trace this thread through Isaiah and see that he does indeed speak to these same issues. The threads that Jesus declared from the Beatitudes were a condition, where your heart condition is, your response to that. How do you personally respond to God? And then how do you walk that out in a world that does oppose you? How do you live that out? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to find these same threads, the condition of our heart, our response to God, and what that might look like, and then how we walk against opposition. And we'll find that throughout Isaiah. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to we'll read the verse, I'll make one little comment, we'll move on to the next one. Right? Because we've already read all of these, you already have these memorized anyway, so we don't really need to spend too much time on it. But I just want you to watch the thread as it weaves through, and then I'll tell you a story at the end. So these ones are about the condition. That's you, Nancy.
Okay. The eyes of the arrogant will be humbled, and the pride brought low, and human pride brought low. The Lord alone will be exalted in that day. The arrogance of man will be brought low, and human pride humbled. The Lord alone will be exalted in that day, and the idols will totally disappear.
Yeah, from that very beginning. This is in the lawsuit. This is where we read this. The very beginning, there's this idea of leveling. You might be oppressed now, but there's a leveling coming.
Mhm.
And those that are above you now, they're going to be brought low. And you, every valley, will be raised up. Next one.
Nevertheless, there will be no more gloom for those who are in distress. In the past, he humbled the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali. But in the future, he will honor Galilee of the nations by the way of the sea beyond the Jordan. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned.
That's just a beautiful verse.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're oppressed? Yeah, I know. I understand that. But a light is dawning. There's this promise coming. In the past, you were this way, but in the future, you'll be this way. He understands our condition, where we are.
I will punish the world for its evil, the wicked for their sins. I will put an end to the arrogance of the haughty and will humble the pride of the ruthless.
And again, see that
Mhm.
attitude of those that are above, they'll be brought low. The valley will be raised. It's beautiful the way this weaves together.
In that day, the deaf will hear the words of the scroll, and out of gloom and darkness, the eyes of the blind will see. Once more, the humble will rejoice in the Lord, the needy will rejoice in the Holy One of Israel.
Yeah. Rejoice, rejoice, because the humble will be raised up. And they will be able to rejoice because they will see that God is going, that hears them, understands them, and we read that in the Tale of Two Judgments. You probably have that on your notes already. Next one.
These are the ones I look on with favor, those who are humble and contrite in spirit, and who tremble at my word.
The least of these. God cares for them now, then, and forever. Yeah. Next one.
This is what the Lord says, in the time of my favor, I will answer you, and in the day of salvation, I will help you. They will neither hunger nor thirst, nor will the desert heat or the sun beat down on them. He who has compassion on them will guide them and lead them beside springs of water.
God's favor will right all wrongs, will be comforted, will be filled. You can hear the promises in Beatitudes, right? You can
Yep.
hear those promises because we read them already, and just hear how Isaiah is reflecting that same thing, that God will do this. And that was in this servant Israel. Then this one.
Shout for joy, you heavens, rejoice, you earth, burst into song, you mountains, for the Lord comforts his people, and he will have compassion on his anointed one.
God cares for those in the lowly place that have that condition. Compassion and comfort and hope are found. We read the blessings for the first triad of the Beatitudes. That those blessings are there. They're promised. God will deliver that blessing.
I will rejoice over Jerusalem and take delight from my people and my people. The sound of weeping and crying will be heard in it no more.
Yeah, I know you're going to say that's
Revelation.
Revelation. I know you're gonna say that. But it's not only comfort. It's not only comfort. God takes delight in those that endure, that may be brought low on this earth, in this sinful place that we live, but still endure. And he delights in us, delights in us.
The poor and needy search for water, but there is none. Their tongues are parched with thirst. But I, the Lord, will answer them. I, God of Israel, will not forsake them. I will make rivers flow on barren heights and springs within the valleys. I will turn the desert into pools of water and the parched ground into springs.
Yeah, when we read this in the servant Israel, we looked at all the things that were missing and used the water as sort of this idea of, I mean, they're in an arid country anyway, but if you look at the images just in this little passage, they're parched, they're barren, it's desert, parched ground, and yet water's going to flow. So what you don't have now, the condition you're in, what you don't have now, God's going to fill with abundance, with this water of abundance. Just really neat the way this comes together. I hope you're seeing that too. Otherwise, I wasted my time.
No.
People of Zion who live in Jerusalem, you will weep no more. How gracious he will be when you cry for help. As soon as he hears, he will answer you. Although the Lord gives you the bread of adversary and the water of affliction, your teachers will be hidden no more. With your own eyes, you will see them.
And Isaiah reminds us, as Jesus does, that our condition is not hidden from him. He knows it. He understands it. And we might not see him at work in the moment, but we shall. Our own eyes will see it. It's not just a fairy tale promise. Our own eyes will see this. Our own eyes will see the salvation. Our own eyes will see God acting on our behalf. Our own eyes will see it.
Woe to those who make unjust laws, to those who issue oppressive decrees,
to deprive the poor of their rights and withhold justice from the oppressed of my people, making widows their prey and robbing the fatherless.
Yeah, it's the image of who are the oppressors? What do they do? Well, they bring injustice. They create this oppression. They create this condition. And what's going to happen to him? Woe to them. There will be a leveling because God cares for those that are oppressed. And so if you're the oppressor, you're going to get squished. That's not a biblical term, but that's what's going to happen.
Lord, you are my God. I will exalt you and praise your name. For in perfect faithfulness you have done wonderful things, things planned long ago. Therefore, strong peoples will honor you. Cities of ruthless nations will revere you. You have been a refuge for the poor, a refuge for the needy in their distress, a shelter from the storm and a shade from the heat. Would be your-
And then when the perfectly faithful God acts, and all will be made right. But in the meantime, until that time, and then while you're still there in this condition, you're a refuge and a shelter and a shade. So even in the midst of your condition, God's still present. He's still there because he cares for you. And that was in that little section we did. That was the praise section.
The spirit of the sovereign Lord is on me, because the Lord has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, proclaim freedom for the captives and release from darkness for the prisoners. Maybe to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor.
Have something that's omitted there.
And.
Oh, that, yeah, that, what that is a footnote that I
Okay.
didn't delete. Yeah, they should be there. Yeah. Yeah. So you recognize this from what? When is this read?
Jesus, isn't he in the temple?
Yeah, he's reading the scroll of Isaiah and he reads this. And we read this in the New Kingdom. And notice what he focuses on. The people that are in this condition. He has sent me, Jesus. He sent me to deal with that condition, to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom, release, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. It's going to change. And I'm the one that's going to do it. I'm the one that's going to offer that. And Jesus proclaims these same truths in the Sermon on the Mount when he reads that there will be the blessings for those in that condition. And he just ties it all together. Am I following this thread okay? You think you're okay with this?
Yes.
Okay, well, let's go on to the next one then, which is the response. Okay, so I'm in this condition. How do I personally respond to that? How do I personally respond to God, even though I might be in that condition? How do I personally respond to that? In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus addresses those who earnestly seek him, and so does Isaiah.
Though your sins are like scarlet, they shall be as white as snow. Though they are as red as crimson, they shall be like wool. If you are willing and obedient, you will eat the good things of the land. But if you resist and rebel, you will be devoured by the sword.
It's a choice for us,
Mhm.
but if we respond, filled, forgiven, and fellowship, those were the promises of that middle triad. And we see here that to forgive and filled and able to fellowship as our sins are now like snow. They're washed clean, they're done away with. There's no barrier now on that highway to God. There are no stones in the way. It's a smooth path to God because Jesus is taking care of our sins. But it's a choice for us.
Come, descendants of Jacob, let us walk in the light of the Lord.
And we're called to respond.
2 lines.
Jesus calls us to respond. It's a choice. It's a choice. We have the choice. We can be blessed or we cannot be blessed.
You keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast, because they trust in you. Trust in the Lord forever, for the Lord himself is the rock eternal.
And when we respond, we have a rock to hold on to, a rock to steady us, a rock that isn't going to wash away, a rock that we can depend on.
On Christ, the solid rock I stand.
On Christ the solid.
Everything else is
rock
shifting
I stand.
sands, right?
They're my favorite.
My soul yearns for you in the night. In the morning, my spirit longs for you. When your judgments come upon the earth, the people of the world learn righteousness.
Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for that righteousness. That's what's on that Beatitudes. And do we have that same hunger and thirst? Jesus promises to fulfill when we seek him, when we hunger and thirst for that same righteousness. There's a lot of good verses out of that praise. I've had 3 or 4 of them here in a row on them. They're just, I didn't want to do the whole thing. Probably could have done the whole thing. So good, so good.
Is not this the kind of fasting I have chosen, to loose the chains of injustice and untie the cords of the yoke, to set the oppressed free and break every yoke? Is it not to share your food with the hungry and to provide the poor wanderer with shelter? When you see the naked, to clothe them, and not to turn away from your own flesh and blood?
Boy, doesn't that sound like something Jesus would say? Does it? Yeah. When have you done this for the least of these? Have you responded to me the way I asked you to respond? Have you done the small things as Jeff talked about this morning? Have you done those small things? This is the kind of fasting I've chosen, the one that's a true response and not just an intellectual one, but a true response of the life change.
All you are thirsty, come to the waters. You have no money. You who have no money, come buy and eat. Come buy wine and milk without money and without cost.
What did our salvation cost us?
Nothing.
Cost God everything. Cost us 0. Come if you're thirsty and you're hungry. Tells the women at the well that he could satisfy her thirst. And he says on the mount that those who thirst will be satisfied. And here Isaiah has these same ideas.
Seek the Lord while he may be found. Call on him while he is near. Let the wicked forsake their ways, and the unrighteous their thoughts. Let them turn to the Lord, and he will have mercy on them. To our God, for he will freely pardon.
Yeah, the John 13:33 verses, seek him while he may be found. It's almost like there's a time element here. There's a choice presented. Are you going to respond? Because it isn't forever. There's going to be a time where it's going to be cut off. So you seek him while you can, while he can be found. We read that one in the servant's victory.
For I will pour water on the thirsty land and streams on the dry ground. I will pour out my spirit on your offspring and my blessing on your descendants. They will spring up like grass in the meadow, like poplar trees by flowing streams.
And again, this image of water and the thirst, the contrast between the two. And it's a perfect it's a perfect picture of our spiritual dryness. Our thirst, Jesus says, will be filled if we hunger and thirst for righteousness. And Isaiah hints at that same fulfillment.
The Spirit of the Lord will rest on him, spirit of wisdom and of understanding, the spirit of counsel and of might, spirit of the knowledge and fear of the Lord. And he will delight in the fear of the Lord. He will not judge by what he sees with his eyes, or decides by what he hears with his ears, but with righteousness he will judge the needy. With justice he will give decisions for the poor of the earth. Righteousness will be his belt, and faithfulness sash around his waist.
Jesus tells the woman at the well, if you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. If you would have asked him, he would have given you that. And who is this person that's able to fulfill that? It's the person who the Spirit of the Lord is rested on, the spirit of wisdom and understanding, the spirit of counsel and might, the spirit of the knowledge and the fear of the God, and he will delight in the fear of the Lord. Fear of the Lord, the beginning of wisdom, understands who God is. And he doesn't see with our eyes, with the flesh eyes.
And she was a Samaritan,
I'm sorry?
and she was a Samaritan.
Yeah.
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 They weren't the favored ones.
Yeah. Yeah, the needy and the poor
Mhm.
are. And of course, we have this little, Ephesians thing, Ephesians 6, armor of God. We saw that a couple of times in there.
Yeah.
I think Paul knew Isaiah. That's all I can say.
Yeah, the Revelation thing in there too. The seven spirits.
Was that in this section?
It's 11.
Oh, the
too.
spirits. Yeah.
Listen to me, you who pursue righteousness and who seek the Lord. Look to the rock from which you were cut and to the quarry from which you were hewn. The Lord will surely comfort Zion and will look with compassion on all her ruins. He will make her deserts like Eden, her wastelands like the garden of the Lord. Joy and gladness will be found in her, thanksgiving and the sound of singing.
Filled, forgiven, fellowship, a middle triad, our response. And when it points us back to Eden, this place where God desires to walk in the cool of the evening with us, to have that kind of intimate fellowship with us. And it all points back there. Now that's what the New Jerusalem's all about. It's a return to that condition where we can walk freely in his light, and fellowship with him. Just kind of a beautiful passage. And we read this in the Servant Messiah. And I made the comment at the time about understand, he's talking to the remnant of the Jews, right? That you have a history. You were hewn from the rock. You were cut out, separated, quarried. I put effort into building you. And I still desire that relationship. All right, what was the third triad? 100%. Get you in it.
Blessed are the peacemakers, for they be called sons of God.
Mhm.
Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And blessed are you when people insult and persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you.
So when we walk in a world that opposes us, as Jews and under Roman occupation, as Christians in the world today, we don't walk in a perfect world, but Jesus offers blessings when we walk with him in a world that's desperately opposed to him. And Isaiah has these same ideas.
Wash and make yourselves clean. Take your evil deeds out of my sight. Stop doing wrong. Learn to do right. Seek justice. Defend the oppressed. Pick up the cause of the fatherless. Plead the case of the widow. Come now, let us settle the matter, says the Lord.
Yeah, and you probably heard Micah 6:8 in there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do justice, love mercy, walk humbly with your God. Yeah. That same idea that Micah talks about, Isaiah does that too. This is how you walk in that. Stop doing wrong. And then what do? Learn to do right. Well, how do you learn to do right? Well, you have to follow God for that, right? You have to read his word. You have to take action. You seek justice. It's not going to come. You're going to have to work for it. The world's in opposition. You got to work for that. Take up the cause of the fatherless. Why? Because they're lowly and they're important to me, God says. So take up their cause. Plead the case of the widow. Make sure justice is done. Because she has no power, but you have the power. So that's how you walk. Come now. Let's settle this matter. Understand this. And that's from the very beginning in the lawsuit.
I'll turn my hand against you. I will thoroughly purge away your dross and remove all your impurities. I will restore your leaders as in days of old, your rulers as at the beginning. Afterwards, you will be called the city of righteousness, the faithful city. Zion will be delivered with justice, her penitent ones with righteousness.
And Jesus promises those in the Beatitudes, those that walk with him in this way, he promises an inheritance. You'll be sons of God, the kingdom, and a great reward. And also notice how Isaiah reflects what's going to happen. There is a change of name here. There's a change of name. Something's going to occur that's going to change it. The old is going to pass away, the new is going to come. Because you are walking with God in opposition to the world. You'll be called the city of righteousness and a faithful city. Not the obstinate, stiff-necked. That's it refers to them in one other place. But yeah, there will be this change. The old will pass, the new will come. Walk with me.
We have a strong city. God makes salvation its walls and ramparts. Open the gates that the righteous nation may enter, the nation that keeps faith.
And Isaiah paints many pictures of this new place, this new Jerusalem, and here the walls of salvation. I just love that. It's not built on us. It's not built on anything we do. It's built on what he does. It's built on his salvation. But it's open to those that walk with him in righteousness. The righteous may enter, the nation that keeps faith.
The path of the righteous is level. You, the upright one, make the way of the righteous smooth. Yes, Lord, walking in the way of your laws, we wait for you. Your name and renown are the desire of our hearts.
And as we walk with God, even in the valleys of the shadows of our lives, Isaiah reminds us that the highway to God is a smooth path. It's free of obstacles where we can approach the upright one. And we can do that because of what happened on the cross. The obstacles are removed. We're free. We're forgiven. We can approach. Nothing is preventing us from walking with God on that path.
And the highway will be there. It will be called the way of holiness. It will be for those who walk on that way. The unclean will not journey on it. Wicked fools will not go about on it, but only the redeemed will walk there. And those the Lord has rescued will return. They will enter Zion with singing. Everlasting joy will crown their heads. Gladness and joy will overtake them, and sorrow and sighing will flee away.
And the highway provided, where does it lead?
The right way.
Where does this highway lead?
Zion.
Yeah, the holy city, the New Jerusalem. And as we're on that path, what can we help but not do? We have to shout, we have to sing. Path is secure, the place is good, and our God is an awesome God. Is an awesome God, he reigns on heaven. Your power and might, is an awesome God.
The nations will see your vindication, and all kings your glory. You will be called by a new name that the mouth of the Lord will bestow. You will be a crown of splendor in the Lord's hand, and a royal diadem in the hand of your God. No longer will they call you deserted, or name your land desolate. but you will be called, let's see now,
Exactly.
Hepzibah.
Hephzibah. And your land Beulah, for the Lord will take delight in you, and your land will be married.
We read that in the end game and that Beulah land,
Yeah.
listen to that song.
Yeah,
That I long for this place, this place where I'm married with God, where I have this intimate fellowship with God. And, again, you have this name change. Those that walk on this path, that walk on this way, even though they're in opposition, that are faithful on that path, they're, and those that are persecuted, insulted, as Jesus talks about, they will walk uprightly on that way of holiness. And yet, they're not deserted, and they're not desolate, and they're not abandoned, but they're God's delight. And this place will bloom, and our fellowship with God will be like that marriage, that one with our God. So this is the promise, the end game, that Isaiah paints this picture for us of what's going to happen. We see it hinted at in Jesus' preaching. We see it hinted at in John's revelation, but it's that same image. That if we walk in this world, even though we might be in opposition, there is this promise of this intimate, complete fellowship, and the name changes. You're a different person. The old will pass, the new will come. All of those images are brought to bear there. Just beautiful stuff.
What does the married mean at the end?
I'm sorry.
The married, what does that mean in the end?
It's
The land will be married.
yeah, your land will be married. It'll be right with God, I think, is that
Brought
sort
together.
of that sort
Oh,
of idea.
okay.
Needed.
Yeah, I don't know that they separated the land too much from their identity. It was always about the land, because the
Okay.
land was the promise. I think there's a metaphor, is that the right word? With that symbolism, probably a better word.
How beautiful on the mountains are the feet of those who bring good news, who proclaim peace, who bring good tidings, who proclaim salvation, who say to Zion, your God reigns. Burst into songs of joy together, you ruins of Jerusalem, for the Lord has comforted his people. He has redeemed Jerusalem.
I really wanted Larry to read this verse, but
I couldn't help but look at it.
I know, I saw you did.
almost got it.
Didn't work out that way. And even if we walk, as Jesus suggests, amid the insult and mistreatment and persecution, our feet are beautiful because we can bring hope and comfort and announce salvation. Our God does reign, and we have been redeemed. So as we walk, even in the midst of this, we have a message to proclaim, a message of hope, and a message of comfort, and a message of promise, even as we walk in opposition. Isaiah reminds us why we have confidence in the predicted outcome. The blessing Jesus tells us about, because he has planned it, and he has promised it, and he has willed it, and he is faithful, and he will do it. So that is the theme, the thread that I found, and I'll tell you the story how I found it first, but that I just think is beautiful. If you take the Beatitudes and look at what Jesus promises in the Beatitudes, and you'll see every single one of those promises is woven all the way through there. One story by many authors, right? It's a continuum. The story, it's the same story. God's plan of redemption from the garden to Revelation is the same.
Garden to glory.
Garden to glory. Yeah. It's the same message. And here, as we've read these 66 books of Isaiah that were sometimes confusing and sometimes had images we didn't understand, and it's a lot like reading Revelation. Sometimes confusing and sometimes images we don't understand. And yet these threads are just woven right through it. Here's the personal story with this. I'll just kind of share. I told you how I did this beginning I copied all of Isaiah into a Word document so I could search. I could do word search. I used Bible Hub electronically, and it allows you to do it, but only not as easily as I want it to. This allows me to, do it in Word. You highlight the words and just kind of scan, 66 books until so it allowed me to do that. And so what I did was I was looking for some keywords that would mean oppression or poorness or thirst was one of the words, walk was one of the words. And I had this list of verses, and I sort of went randomly. I just wrote them out, and sometimes I'd rearrange them because of but then I made the slides because I copy them over from here and put them on the slide. And then I thought, okay, now I need to kind of put this together. It was all put together. I didn't have to do anything when I got to this point. Once I decided these are the ones I want to use, and I popped them over here, they were in perfect order. They seemed to lead one to the other. And I thought, I think maybe I got the right thread. Because it just flowed beautifully, this whole message. I've come to appreciate, what I was going to say was I come to appreciate Isaiah, and that's not it at all. I've come to appreciate how God has revealed himself consistently and through different authors at different times in different ways, but there's a consistent thread of what the message he wants us to have. And it's a message of he understands when we're in that condition of need. He understands who we are. He understands our weaknesses. He understands. And that's why David can say, a broken and contrite spirit, you will not despise. Because you understand us. You understand our weakness. But when we respond to you, and when we hunger and thirst for you, and when we attempt to follow you, he honors that. He honors that. And blessings are promised because of the effort that's there, the decisions that are made. And he understands that we live in a world that we have opposition. You will have trouble in this world. Jesus promises us. We will have that trouble. And sometimes it's spiritual opposition, and sometimes it's just life sucks, but we do have opposition. We do have trial. But when we are faithful as we walk, there's all these other blessings that come. And I think that message of in the Beatitudes, I think is the message that God wanted me to hear. And and I think it's the same message God wanted me to share. So I hope as you went through this, I hope when we went through this, I kind of hope you thought, wow, God's really saying something here. He is speaking through his word. He's written words 3,000 years ago, and he's speaking to me right now, right here. And it should affect how we live. It should affect how we take our next step. We started with this, what's more important, faith or obedience? And what faith allows us to do is take that next step in faith, but in obedience. And I guess my prayer as we leave today is that we will do that this week. Our next step will be one of faithfulness and one of obedience. Okay.
Very good.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys.
No, that's,
It's a beautiful thing.
no, you touched. That's
Yeah.
good. That's good.